specifically over the summer, right before the change at the top of the ticket. But many of them felt that this was a state that shouldn't have been in contention at all. You have a very popular Democratic governor there, a lot of statewide elected leaders that are also Democrats. And so seeing Trump carry Michigan, he spent a lot of time there, but it really just kind of underscores he was really able to drill down on messaging mostly along the economy that really resonated in these battleground states. And that's why you're seeing results like we're seeing today.
Now, former presidential candidate Nikki Haley, once one of Trump's biggest rivals, is now congratulating him and calling on Vice President Harris to concede. How significant is that message from Haley and the fact that we haven't heard from the vice president yet?
Well, I think the vice president will come out on her own time. We're expecting it at some point today. But when you talk about Nikki Haley was Trump's chief rival this primary season. Now, it wasn't a long primary season, but she was the one that stayed in the longest. She's out with a statement today saying you can't just talk about unity in a campaign. You have to show it regardless of the outcome. And then she also did call on saying that begins with Kamala Harris conceding. But the other thing, what's interesting here is, Nikki Haley has kind of been on the outskirts since she dropped out of this race. She was actually asked, if she was going to, or she had talked with the former president sometime last week. And, she said that, she hadn't. She's standing by at the ready. Listen, Donald Trump was really frustrated that Haley didn't come out immediately and drop out of this race, and then also encourage many of her followers to join his cause, and that was a demographic that the Trump campaign really coveted, and so really, I mean, she's coming out now, but as to what kind of impact and what it ultimately means now that it appears that she's kind of frozen out of the Trump circle, we don't quite know what that is just yet.
And Trump said during the ABC News debate with Harris that he had concepts of a plan for health care. House Speaker Mike Johnson recently talked about major reforms to the Affordable Care Act. So any more about how health care policy will change under a second Trump administration?
We've heard rumblings and rumors, but I mean, the reality is he's got 4,000 appointments that they have to begin making. 1,200 of those require Senate confirmation. Policy is in place, but ultimately there's a lot of things that are going to be fluid between now and then. We do know that he's already starting to take those meetings, though.
ABC's Alex Prochet, thank you. And ABC News senior White House correspondent Selena Wang joins me now from the White House covering the Harris campaign. Jay O'Brien's in West Palm Beach, Florida, covering the Trump campaign. Jay, what are you hearing from the Trump camp now? What happens next for them?
Excuse me, Diane. Firstly, we're hearing a sense of jubilation from those in Trump world. This was a night that they felt they were going to win, they were optimistic about, but over the course of the evening, that level of optimism only just rocketed, from this being a close race to North Carolina getting called, and then that feeling amongst Trump supporters, amongst Trump campaign officials that I've talked to, just exploding in terms of realizing that they were going to win this race by the margin that they're winning it by. That's another thing we're hearing today, is that they feel that the margin is significant, and also there's a lot of championing the fact that they won the popular vote, something that Donald Trump has tried to do and wanted to do the 3 times he's been on a presidential ballot, but only has been able to do here in 2024. They believe that that gives them some form or fashion of a mandate from the American electorate. Another thing I've heard from Republicans at this hour is that they're trying to get to work and build this second Trump administration, trying to staff it, put people in various positions. There's already been this ongoing transition process, but it's been unclear as to how much buy-in Donald Trump has had into that process, because he's famously superstitious. He doesn't like to plan for things until he has to plan for them. Another thing to keep in mind is that kind of coterie of figures around Donald Trump who have said they're going to have a role in this second Trump administration. Elon Musk has said he wants to have a role in modernizing the federal government and creating efficiency in the federal government. And also, obviously, chief among them is RFK Jr., famous vaccine skeptic who Donald Trump has talked about on the stump as saying that he wants to, quote unquote, make America healthy again. RFK Jr. has been giving interviews even into today where he has said if he were to get control, as he puts it, of the federal public health agencies under a second Trump administration, one of his first orders of business would be try to get fluoride out of the drinking water, Diane. So plans very much being made at this hour.
All right. And Selena, what are you hearing from the Harris campaign, and what is the vice president expected to say when she addresses the nation, expected now this afternoon?
Yeah, we're getting new details from the White House that the vice president is expected to speak at 4 p.m. this afternoon at Howard University, and that the second gentleman is going to be with her. Now, we're not getting any official information from the campaign about what she's expected to say, but I have been talking to Democratic operatives, and they say she's going to graciously accept the results of this election. They expect that she's going to wish the former president the best because she loves this country. She wants what's best for this country, and she's also going to thank her supporters. But look, I've been talking to sources all day, and they are in a state of shock. Some sources telling me that this is absolutely brutal, the worst case scenario, calling this an absolute bloodbath. Most of them tell me that the vice president did the absolute best she could with the cards that she was dealt. Given the fact that President Biden stayed in this race so long, she barely had any time to introduce herself to the American people to make her message clear. But some are telling me that the vice president's fatal flaw was failing to make a clean break from the Biden administration, from the president himself, not making clear how she would be different under a Harris administration, refusing to create that separation. And ultimately, from here on out, the Democratic Party, they're going to have to do a lot of soul searching because this election has shown critical coalitions move to the right, especially when it comes to Latino voters, when it comes to black voters. And there's a lot of discussion now about how to move forward from here.
All right, Selena Wang, Jay O'Brien, thank you both. And let's bring in ABC News contributor and former Democratic Senator Heidi Heitkamp, along with Republican strategist and former Trump administration official Neil Chatterjee for more. Heidi, this is a devastating blow to Democrats. So what went wrong here? Is this really just President Biden dropped out too late, she didn't have enough time, etc.? Or is there a bigger lesson here for Democrats in general and the messaging that they've been putting out to the country?
Honestly, there's people who always want to analyze election failure, taking a look at that envelope of election. You've got to start delivering your message and bringing people into your policies much earlier on. And I think it's kind of like, I think the public did not believe that the economy was what the Biden administration kept saying the economy was, believed that the Biden administration was responsible for inflation, and they didn't respond to that early enough. They kept thinking we're going to have a soft landing, inflation will come down, and so all will be well. And I think they underestimated that abortion was not going to trump the economic issues. And so, I never look at campaigns. I think about tenure of this administration, what message could have been delivered earlier and clearer to the American public, how they could have modified their policies to adjust and respond to concerns. The border is a great example. Waited way too long to respond to the border. And by the time they responded, people said, oh, you're just doing that as a political thing now to respond to the politics of the day. So, if you really are honest about all of this, this trouble started when you saw wrong track numbers, probably beginning with the Afghan pullout that people found devastating, and they never appropriately responded. They just kept thinking, if we do good, if we pass an infrastructure bill, people will see how glorious we are and vote for us. And that's never a good strategy. That you have to communicate on a regular basis.
How much do you think, given that this is on President Biden, it's on Vice President Harris, or it's on Democrats in general?
I think it's on Democrats in general. I think this is a mistake that we make all the time. If you look at polling, people will say that they don't believe experts anymore. And that a lot of that is tied up with how people feel about science. But what do Democrats say when they want you to believe in their economic message? Oh, 20 Nobel laureates think this is a great idea. Well, people don't care if it's affecting their pocketbook. And so I just think that the Democratic Party needs to look in the mirror and say, why don't people like us? Why is having the Democratic brand? Jon Tester is a great example. You know, this may be the only place you're going to hear this, but Jon Tester ran the best campaign of all the Senate campaigns. Why do I say that? Because he outperformed Kamala Harris at a higher percentage than anyone else in the country. And he did that by being from Montana and speaking clearly and concisely and being authentic. And that's the message. Who are we as the Democratic Party, and how do we purvey that message? We say, can I just make one last point? We say we are the party of the people. Guess what? The people are saying, not so much.
They don't
Not
feel
so much,
that.
no.
Now, Republicans, Neil, doubled down on Trumpism, and it clearly paid off in this election. But that also leaves a lot of Republicans feeling like they don't have a home. So what happens now for conservatives like Liz Cheney, who still believe in the fundamental beliefs of the Republican Party, but they don't believe in former President Trump and his wing of the party, if you will?
Look, I think President Trump, President-elect Trump, has changed the coalitions in the two parties. I think he has turned the Republican Party into more of a populist working class party, but it's still a big coalition. I think he won a mandate last night, and I think you're going to need the full array of conservatives in the House, in the Senate, governors around the country to come together and actually effectuate policy that benefits the American people. And so I think folks like Liz Cheney, folks like Senator Heitkamp, who have a voice, who can speak to the concerns of the American people, are going to be able to still impact the process in this country. I think, look, on foreign policy, you saw my former boss, Leader McConnell. He is a foremost defender of, sort of that Reagan-esque approach of peace through strength, and is going to fight to make sure that Ukraine can defeat Russia and win that war. I think you're going to see other Republicans who will be constructive in working with the new administration, working with the new Congress to pursue policies that benefit the American people. But there's no question that the Republican Party of Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush, it's now Donald Trump's party, and it's a more populist working class party.
How does that speak to the message from the president-elect this morning, though, saying now it's time to heal, now it's time to get to come together? Can that populist party also be the party of unity?
I hope so. And again, I think, elections tend to bring out animus and drive the temperature up. Once elections are over, people tend to calm down and come together and govern.